ask questions. John has his hand raised up right now. John,
Go ahead, John.
Unmute, yeah.
Okay, one thing that I want to emphasize is that for many applications, 99% accuracy is total failure. I mean, nobody would want to drive a car that will fail or have an accident on every 99 trips. No one would fly in an airplane that would have a crash on every 99 trips. For those things, you must have 100% accuracy or the option of doing something else to compensate. And in banking, for example, every transaction must be accurate to a fraction of a cent. You must have absolute precision in banking. And if you cannot do it, you must have a message that says you can't do it. And these are things that we have been doing with neurosymbolic, and we don't really, in fact, even putting neuro first is inaccurate because neuro is one important part of it, but it's not the whole thing. We have four kinds of reasoning: abduction, deduction, induction, and evaluation, and all four must be absolutely precise.
Yes.
Fully agree. I fully agree. I worked in aerospace in industry, and you are 100% sure, correct. And sometimes we want 150% assurance, you know. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we have Ravi.
Ravi,
He's
go
muted.
ahead, Ravi.
Ravi, unmute.
Can I be heard now?
Yeah.
Yes, you can be heard.
Sorry, I was muted. The question is connection between attention, which is part of cognition, and recognition by all these techniques that attention extent is measurable. Am I able to ask the question right way?
So Ravi, is your question that attention and other properties of the LLMs are measurable?
No, even if they are measurable, are they recognized by the models these days? Because this is a dynamic.
Okay. True. They are recognizable, but the score or the amount in which they are being recognizable are extremely small. Right. So somewhere down the line, what I see is, and this is coming straight away from my exploration in the local source contribution work, is somewhere down the line in the later layers of the LLMs, sudden shift in the concept happens. Now, why does it happen? I'm not really sure at this moment. But I see that the concept that it has lost in the middle, it doesn't recover that. So the answer over there is sort of correct, but it's not completely correct.
So
Okay,
I was thinking of comparison between process of thinking and process of these modelings that you experts have described. And I see that just as mind disconnects with the thought, similar things might be happening in machine.
Yeah, Ravi, it's a
Absolutely.
philosophical question, which again, I think needs some further discussion later on. So I'm just looking at the time right now, and maybe who else is Harshit? You asked any questions?
Harshit.
Yeah. I have just a one small question. So currently, actually, the information are actually distributed across the weight, right? And we are trying to build a symbolic layer on top of it. So I was wondering, because right now there is no specific universal schema defined to compress any kind of surface level information into a basic, a smallest unit of information, and you can say. And when we take a cluster of that unit, we can say that, okay, this can represent that surface level information. So if we do not have a defined protocol, you can say a frame, what we are calling, like we are doing a research on that we are taking a surface level information and trying to compress that into a very small finite frame. We have we define what that frame is. So we are wondering that if compared to the adjusting a weight, is that scalable relative to representing a information in a small bits? Like you can define anything, like taking a inspiration from an ontology, like you can define any ontology layer and use the LLM to compress that information into that ontology layer, and then actually use that ontology to actually see which frames are getting activated when LLMs are actually answering the questions. So this is what we're doing.
It's a long question, but let's.
Well, I don't know if I got the full question, but let me give you an example. One of my students, he did a very interesting work on, let's say, he uses the language model to read the text, to extract the relations, right? And on top of that, right, the LLMs, it handles the extraction, reading the text, and providing some suggestions for the symbolic system, right, from the text. He did this work for the agriculture domain. It was a very interesting work. However, the LLM system, of course, couldn't enforce rules connected with pathogens and with fungi and other diseases that you show in plants. So actually, the combination that we had with using OWL reasoners, using palette and other ways of handling the formal consistency was what actually worked in this case. So the external ontology in the domain as well, in agriculture, there's some very specific ontologies. One of them is called AgroVoc. They provide a semantic anchoring, as we called, that transform the vague labels into a formal URI with the knowledge relationships that have been extracted. So the LLM by itself would never generate the formal reasoning for the agriculture domain without the external source provided by the symbolic engine that we built. So this is perhaps related to what you mean.
Okay, so continuing on, I think Gary, you have a question. I think this is going to be a last question before we wind down here.
Yes, I had a question for Manus. You talked about the idea of steering the LLMs without restructuring it, without retraining it. You also talked about as restructuring it, making it sparse and things of that nature. We had a speaker 2 weeks ago, Randy Goebel, who talked about debugging foundational models. And I'm wondering if you're familiar with that work, or if you would agree that that's sort of what you're trying to do here, debugging the foundational model.
Yes. So Gary, to that, I'm more driven by debugging it with some knowledge structures, as opposed to making another data, making it more data set driven. For instance, let me give you an example. There is this work called representation engineering called RepE, which sort of tells you that, oh, okay, I know that the model I have a data set which I want to test, and that data set is on truthful QA, let's say, to measure the truthfulness. And I know that model is making some mistake. So I'm not giving it more samples of truthful QA, but I'm giving it more samples of another data set that I know the model will look at it and compare and make it, and move in a correct direction. So what they try to do is that they add another parallel data set, which is contrasting to the existing one, so that the model measures the difference between the two, and then it gets steered in that space. So they say that in order to steer it, if you just give parallel data sets or parallel examples, that also can make the model steer in the direction of the correct answer. So this is what they referred as a representation engineering mechanism, because there's no science behind it. We are not really investigating what the concepts are, what they represent. We are just giving it more negative samples so that it knows to value what are the positive samples that it's going to be looking at.
Okay. Thank you, Manas. And with that, I think we'll